Hi, Ian Roberts and Mastering Composition. So I'm back from the Grand Canyon and I managed to respond to most of the comments from last week. The week before that I just didn't get to, but thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate them. The trip was great, very demanding. My wife didn't go, but thought of it as terms of painting as an extreme sport. There was a dozen painters. We really painted from sort of 6 to 8 in the morning and from like 5 to 7 in the evening, basically looking up and down the river. So early morning light and late night. And the canyon faces, the colors and the structure of them were complicated. I mean, the Northeast, trees and lakes, I sort of feel like I understand that in terms of painting. This took a lot of attention to sort of get it to work, I thought, anyway. I wanted to analyze the dozen paintings I did. I haven't touched them up at all, but I photographed them. And I thought I'd analyze them in terms of structure, color temperature, and value masses, but I recorded it twice and it just went on so long. I think we're back to basically show and tell with some minor commentary. So each of the paintings is 10 by 12. I did one each morning and afternoon we had available, and I'm showing you all 12. I just thought it would be more useful, not sort of editing out the 3 best. And I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end. I just thought I'd show you 3 photographs. I didn't take that many, actually. Just showing the steep-walled canyon, the talus slopes of the decaying rock faces, and how green the water was. And then this was just close to where I painted one morning. You'll see one of the paintings looks like this. And the way the light is hitting the tips of those rocks up at the top back there, boy, that doesn't last very long. And then finally, this is where we stopped for lunch. The boat doesn't look very big. It held 15 people. It's pretty big when you get back there. But we ate lunch on sandbars and we camped on sandbars. There was a lot of sand. This would have been fairly typical of a morning. By the time I got there, there'd just be sunlight at the top, and then I'd just wait until a moment came along that seemed about right for this shape. And you can see the warm and the cool that sort of pulls those two apart. This one was actually fairly typical of the afternoon, is that by the time I'd set up my tent and gotten organized, there'd just be the last vestiges of light coming. And I'd have to remember those, keep them in mind, because even though there was lots of light, there was no direct sunlight. And then I could just keep the whole thing moving forward based on what I could see, and then just add these warm hits at the end. This was an afternoon scene, and the whole thing was enormous. It was way more complicated than that. I'd had to kind of structure it and simplify it. But you can see a shaft of shadow here. And this is all in shadow. It's a big mass. But you see all the different changes in color there. It was just so complicated. This painting could have been done almost anywhere, really. It was morning. The sunlight was coming down the cliff as the hour or so went on. There was more and more light in here reflecting off the cliff. But that big dark was kind of central to this beautiful structure that I thought that was kind of holding that painting together. This is another example of a morning painting where I come out and there's just a little bit of light up here, and I just waited until there was a point where I said, that's the shadow shape I want here. But again, you can see the color temperature shift between those two, and you can see all the different color shifts that are going on in the rocks themselves just in the light. And that turquoise is maybe a little exaggerated, but the water was almost like the Caribbean. It was so brilliant. This was a morning painting, and there was just a shaft of light hitting this right there. And then this beautiful shadow shape of all these sort of varying rock colors in the distance there. This again, afternoon, last little bits of light here gone by the time I've painted them, but I just really sort of mentally make a note of it and put them back in. The one thing to notice here, I mean, structurally, you see this really strong structure kind of pulling us maybe right out of the painting. And I added a turquoise hit here. But I'm thinking I might have to do a little bit more there and a little bit more there so that we're not getting pulled out quite so much. Here we just have one big mass of sunlight, everything else in shadow, And even though we get a really nice color temperature shift here, even though this is in shadow and you think it should be cool, the rocks themselves are so warm that you can't really paint them very cool. They have to kind of, be the color that they are. So it's really engaging thinking about all these color relationships in shadow and light. This again is another example of, these lights here they were there for about 10 minutes. And I had to just draw them in pretty carefully, make sure I knew where all the lit, because the rest of it, it was still light out. There just wasn't no direct sunlight. So everything else I could just paint for an hour or so, and then I just put the lights in at the end based on what I'd drawn in at the beginning. And that's the only vertical I did, because that shaft was just like a cathedral running up into the sky. It was just enormous how big that mass of rock was. This, as I remember it, was a pretty overcast morning. I'm just looking at the sky, and I seem to remember it was pretty hazy, and there isn't a very big shift of warm and cool to that. It's lighter, but for one thing, the rocks are very warm, so it's hard to sort of make them too cool. And the other thing is it wasn't that hard and direct a sunlight. So as always, I hope you found that helpful and enjoyable. Please do subscribe if you haven't. Like the video. If you did like the video, please do sign up for my email list, which allows you to get this email every Tuesday in your inbox. I never share the list with anyone. There's no other emails. It's just that one email each week. I hope you have a great week. All the best, and bye for now.